want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that reveals facts, truth, research, and statistics and never messes around. With your hosts, Taylor Phillips, Ed Smith, Frank Vashner, and Buck Gino. We lay down the entire truth about everything regarding your Detroit and Michigan sports teams, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no coddling, no pop culture, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313. Follow Frank Vashner at Frank_Vashner, VAJCNER. And follow Buck Gino on Twitter at BuckGino3rd. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group with the same name. The hosts of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast do not take any suggestions or criticism from any member of its audience on how it should be run. It is up to the host to decide what they want to cover. They also do not intend to be any amount of popular in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Additionally, the views of the audience, right or wrong, do not reflect the actual truth revealed on this program.
Episode 281 of the Week in Review is now in session. Before we get to those topics, Ed, we'd like to pass our condolences to everybody who lost their lives and their homes, everybody related to that due to Hurricane Harvey in Houston and Hurricane Irma in Florida. And also, today's 9/11. I'd like to pass the condolences of the people related to the lives that those people lost at 9/11, the World Trade Center in 2001. 16 years ago today, that had happened in Manhattan, New York. This is a very tragic moment. So, just a moment of silence, type of deal, Ed.
It is quite a sense of irony or coincidence. Is the term I should probably use here, that we had to open this episode on this day, and especially the surrounding topics that's, it's too hard to ignore. So, like you, I'm in agreement with what you stated before. Thoughts, condolences, and well wishes to everyone that's been affected by these natural disasters, whether it be at home or abroad, especially in Puerto Rico or in Mexico. And as you mentioned before, with today being, of course, the anniversary of 9/11, not just the victims and the victims' families of the attack in New York, but also the attacks in the Pentagon and the attacks that took place in Pennsylvania as well. On Flight 93, I believe it was, that crashed in a wooded area in Pennsylvania, something to that effect. So, long story short, before we skip to anything, best thoughts, wishes, and condolences to everyone that might have been affected by these selective tragedies. And let's use them as we can to heal as possible and help each other out, because at the end, no matter what difference, no matter what affiliation that we might share, we're all in this together as one nation. And if we can help out one another as best as possibly can, that would go a great way to showcasing how great we are as a nation to the rest of the world. So let's hope that leads to that.
Yeah, that's true. So, with all that out of the way, it's time to recap some football. This time we're going to start with the Detroit Lions because the NFL season has just gotten underway and is upon us right now.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
The Detroit Lions started off very ugly. They fell behind 10-0 after one. Then when they scored touchdowns, their special teams had trouble with the extra points, whether it be an extra point being botched by the either the snapper or the holder, or just failed 2-point conversions when they actually had to try to go for two on 2 occasions, one being down by 2 and then the other being down by 4. And Matt Prater had nothing to do with all those failed extra points, because he was perfect in extra points and field goals, but the offense again started off quiet in the first quarter. The Cardinals took a 10-0 lead. Then they took a 10-9 halftime. The Lions edged it to within 10-9 at halftime. Their defense somehow held the Cardinals to just 10 points in the first half. Then they allowed 7 points in the second half. That was a touchdown early on in the third quarter, but the Lions somehow came back with 26 unanswered points, and they came back to win 35-23. Cardinals added a too little too late touchdown in the very end with about a minute and a half to go. But Matthew Stafford with a pick six, and then Carson Palmer with a pick six. Palmer with 3 interceptions. Granted, the Lions' defense was actually up to the task, but at the same time, they took advantage of the corpse of Carson Palmer, according to Jeff Moss, the founder and the editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag. He tweeted, "The Lions can't run the football. They can't rush the passer. They got lucky they were playing a team with a corpse of Carson Palmer." And that tells it all.
Well, I can see what Moss meant by the whole Moss, corpse of Carson Palmer thing, because I gotta agree, Palmer looked horrible, just absolutely horrible. Overthrowing guys, it seems like, at least 2, if not all of his interceptions, he was throwing right to the defender in Honolulu Blue. Now, as opposed to the not getting a pass rush, I think everybody's been blinded by the whole aspect of you've got to get sacks to enforce your ability to rush the passer. That's not necessarily true. I saw a couple of instances, a couple of plays where they were able to get in for some pressure. They just weren't capitalizing or finishing on some of those plays, some of those instances, or some of those opportunities. They had a couple of chances to wrap up a sack. They did not get it done. They led to a big play. It just comes down to, hey, if you finish wrapping up the QB, you can get a sack or force enough pressure, it would cause a bad throw. The pass rush was not, again, it's still an area of weakness that they need to get better on, but I thought they made some key plays and needed situations and moments, i.e. the sack by Anthony Zettel when Arizona was trying to get the momentum going. That stopped them dead in the tracks. So it was an ebb and flow type of thing, a little bit hit and miss from pass rush, but nowhere near terrible. And let's not forget, this is also Arizona Cardinals offense that has a seasoned veteran and an all-around future Hall of Famer in Larry Fitzgerald, who is still reliable. Even this is what's 12, 13, 14 season in the league. He's still reliable as all get out. And let's not forget, you had a running back in David Johnson who was outstanding last season. I think in terms of not just running the ball, but also catching the ball in the backfield. He was, in terms of averaging total yards per game, he had over 132 to be exact. So they had a lot. The Lions defense had no easy out for them. They had a lot to deal with, and in my opinion, in terms of limiting the output of Larry Fitzgerald, certainly limiting the output of Johnson. And of course, he got injured, but still, he was, for the most part, kept in check until he got hurt. In fact, he injured himself on the fumble, and that leads directly to my last point: turnovers. If you see the opportunity to get turnovers, you got to cash in on them. There was a forced fumble that they almost couldn't recover, and then of course the big fumble near the end of the third quarter, which obviously was the biggest turning point of the whole game, started the ball rolling on the Lions' comeback, and they never looked back. And then of course the interceptions, capped off by the pick six by Miles Killebrew. So that was more telling to me than in terms of, hey, they couldn't get a pass rush. Well, sometimes if you force turnovers, you don't necessarily need a pass rush or 8 or 9 sacks to let everybody know that the pass rush got through. So, for my money, the defense was more than adequate. remember this was a 17-9 game for a long time in that third quarter, or actually it's close to a tight game all throughout the first three quarters before that fourth quarter explosion, and that was due largely in part, in my view, to the defense playing as well as possible to keep this team in it.
Yeah, the entire game was tight until the Lions pulled away late with that Miles Killebrew pick six, 32 yards. The Lions defense took advantage, like you pointed out, took advantage of turnovers, or at least one, that pick six. They almost took advantage of those other turnovers. The offense just needs to clean it up a little bit.
Oh, definitely. But, as nasty as that pick six from Stafford was, it was the only turnover of the whole game from Detroit's side of things.
It was the only one, but 82 yards. Man.
Right. And it was, and if you want to look at that, more than anything, if you want to analyze, dissect that play, that was not a bad throw from Stafford. He knew exactly where he was throwing to. He was trying to look for Golden Tate over the middle. And with Josh Bynes, the linebacker, who, by the way, coincidentally, he used to play for the Lions, he came in over the middle, and due to that, he was well within that 5-yard contact space. He used it to disrupt Golden Tate's route. It was before the pass, so you couldn't throw a pass interference flag even if you wanted to. And that led to the interception returned by Bethel for the touchdown. So, if anything, you can point to that play, that move by Josh Bynes that led to the pick six. That should not be seen, in my opinion, as a knock on Stafford, but I get it. You want to give credit to the quarterback. When they win, you got to put some blame on the QB when they don't do well. So I get it, especially with Sky, who just signed the biggest contract in league history. I get it. But I think that play, when you go over it, it's a little bit nitpicky to say, oh, that was completely Stafford's fault. No, in my opinion, that was due to a great play made by Josh Bynes, the linebacker, that led to the defense capitalizing. And as for Stafford, as you can see, the rest of the game, he didn't throw another pick, he didn't throw another turnover. He had over almost 300 yards passing and still threw 4 touchdowns. So, in terms of a guy who probably some had fear of, oh, he's going to get complacent now that he's got his money, I didn't see any of that. Not at all.
I don't blame Stafford completely on that play, but just a little suggestion to Matt Stafford himself. I would have hung on to the football and try to take it in for at least some yardage.
I get it, but like I said, that play was so quick. It was such a bang-bang type of play. As soon as the ball was out of his hand, Tate's route had been already disrupted, and it was well on its way into Bethel's hands. So if Stafford had a chance, he would probably still make that same play. He would just wait, probably get that ball out just a fraction even faster, or find another route, or wait for Tate to get open. Because Stafford, he's got better mobility, improved mobility now, where he can shake and move around in the pocket without taking the easy sack. Even if it comes down to throwing it away, he would still do that. But knowing Stafford, he would recreate that play with no fear of the consequences at all.
That's a good point. Yep. But let's get to the Kenny Golladay stuff here. Kenny Golladay, 2 touchdown receptions, both diving. 1 from 10, and then the other from 45. Let's get to that real quick. You pointed out off the air that he was untouched until he was actually in the end zone, when it looked like he dove for it and landed for the ball. He caught it, but landed short of the goal line somewhere, maybe the 1 or 2. But you want to explain why he was in?
No problem. See, I think everybody was been so watching college football for about over a week now. We've forgotten how rules differentiate in terms of contact and down by contact from college to the pros. In college, no matter what you do, if you receive a ball or catch a ball or whatever, as soon as you hit the ground, whether it's a knee or an elbow or your thigh or your ass cheek, you're down by contact. The play is over. Whereas conversely, in the NFL, if you, let's say, you make a diving catch and you're still in bounds and you fall down, but no one no receiver, no defender made contact with you, you were still allowed by rule to get up and continue to play as much as possible. And this is what happened here in the case of the Galladay second touchdown catch. He made a great dive, stretched out, used that 6'2", 6'4" length of his, caught the ball, and when he dove out, stretched out, when he hit the ground, he maintained control possession throughout. That's the whole process of catch, a.k.a. the Calvin Johnson rule. And when he hit the ground, yeah, he's about at the 1 or 2 yard line, but when his momentum carried his body, it carried him over the goal line into the end zone. And looking at that playing over and over, he was not touched by a defender until he was well past the goal line and into the end zone. So even if the defender had made contact, it was after he made the catch, made the process, and gotten into the end zone. So either way, it was going to be a touchdown regardless.
Yeah, kind of like a skipping rock.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yep, there you go. That's why the touchdown counted. Kenny Galladay had himself a hell of a game. He's one rookie.
I mean, I know people were trying to gauge themselves, seeing how he did in the preseason, because, preseason is not always the best indicator, signed 2008 Detroit Lions. But it is worth noting he had 5 catches, a couple of them were touchdowns, and here he is in his first ever pro NFL game. Mind you, this is not a bad defense that the Lions were facing. The offense was anemic for Arizona's, but their defense, in my opinion, is pretty solid. The secondary, a couple of noteworthy secondary players, Patrick Peterson and Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. Both those guys went to LSU, played together at LSU. And the linebacking core, I mentioned Bynes already, the guy who made the hit that led to the Beckel pick 6. And, of course, I think, in my opinion, an underrated name that people don't talk about too much, Chandler Jones, who they got from New England last year. He had about 11 sacks last year. He got a sack or 2 in this game. Chandler Jones is a very tremendous pass rusher. He's a guy I wanted the Lions to get by any means last year. He's good in the pass rush, and he comes from a family of great athletic talent. His brother Arthur won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, and more famously, his younger brother, or rather his other brother, John Bones Jones, is the UFC's light heavyweight champion and one of the greatest fighters in MMA history. So Chandler Jones is no slouch when it comes to athletic genes or in the gene pool in his family. So looking at all that, the fact that the Lions were having some troubles with that type of defense through the first 3 quarters didn't surprise me in the least, knowing the names and talent that's there. But what did surprise me at least a little bit, or actually was impressive, was seeing the type of game that Kenny Galladay had. And I'm just going to say right here, to quote the notorious Conor McGregor, mark my words, Kenny Galladay will be a dark horse, if not a potential front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, dark horse would be actually more accurate. Yeah, more importantly, team-wise, the Lions are going to need Kenny Galladay to just keep it up. They're going to need him to keep stepping up especially when in week 2 when they head into the Meadowlands at MetLife Stadium against the New York Giants next Monday at 8:30 on ESPN Monday Night Football. And let's preview that right now. The Giants lost to the Dallas Cowboys 19-3 last night on NBC Sunday Night Football. Last Sunday night, just a night ago. The Giants only scored 3 points. They either might have run into a hell of a Cowboys defense, otherwise they might have struggled getting the ball to the end zone or even scoring points in any way, shape, or form. They only scored 3 or both.
Well, here's the one big key that a lot of people would point to, and I think would be the smart to point to. No Odell Beckham. OBJ was hurt. He was still out with his injury that he suffered in the preseason. It was, I'm sure, brought up at least a couple of times. It was shown on the sidelines during the telecast on NBC last night, and it's for a reason. Say what you want about the guy, how some things he may do off the field, the both parties, the attitude, whatever. There's no question the type of talent and the impact that he brings to the game. Clearly evident because, Eli Manning, even though he does have 2 Super Bowl rings for some godforsaken reasons, and beating Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl to do that, last night he was horrible. And some would say he's been horrible for a long time now, and he uses the coattails of either great defense or players like Odell Beckham to hide his ineffectiveness. And it really, really showed last night. He threw a backbone-killing backbreaker of an interception that killed any chances of hopes of a comeback last night. And I'm saying this, this probably be like segue to an early prediction, but depending on how this game will go is to see A, if Odell Beckham will be cleared to play, and B, how he will look if he is playing. That's really what's going to come down to me of who's going to win that game, despite it being, yes, at MetLife on Monday Night Football. The biggest X factor is the health of Odell Beckham Jr., without question.
Yeah, and that's good. That's pretty key here. You would know if you gotten word how when Odell Beckham will return at some point this season.
Yeah, we would probably, like I said, it's the way we got to see how the week goes first. He may have a miraculous recovery, all of a sudden he'll be good to go by next week. Or, and this is probably the more likely option, in my view, the more likely outcome, it'll probably be a game time decision. They're going to line him up in warm up, see how it'll go. And if he's good enough, they'll say, hey, you can play. If not, the thing, sit your ass down. You're still going to you got to heal a little bit more. But knowing how absolutely pathetic and inadequate the Giants' offense looked last night, excuse me, I don't think Dallas' defense is that good. Excuse me. Yes, I know they got the likes of Charlie and everything, but I think that was more due to the impact of no Odell Beckham. So if Beckham plays, it's going to give an immediate mental boost to the chance that, hey, we got a chance. We got a chance to do some damage now. Whereas if he doesn't, it makes you think, oh shit, we don't know what we're going to do. And also another thing, I felt that the Giants' offensive line was quite poor in their protection of Eli last night. Now, I think it's safe to say the Cowboys, due to them being just a better overall team period than the Lions, they'll probably have a lot more better depth on the defensive line in terms of getting after the quarterback. But I still say there's some chances, opportunities among the battle of the trenches that the Lions could take advantage of. Whether it be for Rashad Robinson up the middle, Haloti Ngata, who almost had an interception, by the way. He got hurt, but he almost had an interception in the game. Not to mention on the ends, I mentioned Anthony Zetto. I think he could be an X factor on the defensive side of things. And, of course, Ziggy Ansah. And I'm specifically mentioning the edge rushers because I felt it was an area of concern they needed to improve on, at least the slightest. I don't think they did that over the course of the offseason, and it got impacted even more, whether it be suspensions, like Armonte Bryant, for instance, and, of course, injuries, most notably the injury to Kerry Hyder, where he blew out his Achilles and he's gone for the year. That was a big, big blow to the Lions' defensive line. So it's up to Anthony Zetto. It's basically a case of next man up for Anthony Zetto, and for Ziggy Ansah of show up, suit up, and show up, because I believe this is his contract year. So maybe this is the motivation that he needs to showcase what we saw glimpses of in his earlier seasons, where he looked like an absolute freak of nature coming off that end, coming off that rush. So it's not my key. To me, the biggest matchup is not necessarily, what can the Lions do to stop Odell Beckham if he plays? It's, can that defensive line get through the Giants' offensive line and try to force Eli to make any more or make more of his well-known, what I like to call, derby turnovers. So it comes down to what the Lions' pass rush can do. If they can't get to Eli the way the Giants do it, the way the Cowboys do, at least a fraction of it, it's going to be a long night, in my opinion. So that would be the biggest key for the Lions staff. They want to have any success. More so than getting off to a hot start, more so than Stafford being and your defensive line, knowing how the Giants' O-line is, can you get through them to force Eli to make mistakes? That's it.
Yeah, and that's why the secondary also needs to chip in if the defensive line doesn't do well.
Right. And the secondary, I felt held his own a little bit. Obviously, you saw the 2 interceptions. I think for the most part, they did okay. Darius Slay lost, and amongst the others, and Killebrew like a pick 6 at the end. And now you're going to be going from, like I said, in terms of quarterback play, you're going to be going from, like we mentioned, a rotting corpse in Carson Palmer probably should retire after this year, to facing a walking dirt machine in Eli Manning, who, if he's going to be without Odell Beckham for a second year in a row, my God, that's like almost a Christmas gift for you. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and predict that game, if we may, ahead of time. Ed, I'll start with you.
Okay, I'm looking at the ESPN Pick Center right now. It has the spread currently at Giants -1. So this is as close to a pick 'em as you can possibly get. And it's clearly factored by the Odell Beckham situation with his injury as to whether or not will he be able or be ready to play. Trust me, that's going to be the biggest storyline regarding this game as we lead up to it next Monday night. So it comes down to this. If Odell Beckham plays, the Giants have a better chance of winning. If he doesn't, in my opinion, the Lions have a better chance of winning. I guess you could
we'll predict this in 2 ways, if necessary.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to sound like hedge betting, but it's got to be realistic and honest here. We don't know for sure. We can't look into a crystal ball and say, oh, yeah, Beckham's going to play, or, oh, no, he's not. So we don't know for sure. If he plays, I say the Giants are going to find a way to squeak out a win. It'll be close. I'd say maybe a 17-14 type of deal, because I still don't see the Lions getting off to a hot start again, and they'll probably need something to happen in the fourth quarter, try to make it close, but it won't be enough.
And they're playing on the road.
Yeah, and they're playing on the road. But even still, like the Giants, they've had some trouble offensively. This is like, the 6th or 7th straight game or 8th straight game now where they failed to score 20 points. Like, the 19 is the most they've had. They've only had 3 last night, and they haven't even cracked 20 going back to the middle point of last year. So clearly there's some issues with that Giants offense, and it's not even related to Odell Beckham's injury, amongst other things. So if the Giants were to win, it'll be a low-scoring affair, probably 17-14 for defense making enough stops. But that's only if Odell Beckham plays. If he doesn't, I actually see the Lions squeaking out a tight one, probably a last-second Matt Prater field goal. Let's go. I'm going to say Detroit 19, Giants 17. So either 16 or 17 points would be my prediction if you want to hope for a Lions victory. That would be another key, too. If you keep the Giants under 20 points, that would be your best possible option to win. So if the Lions are going to win, it's probably going to have to be a 19-17, 19-16 type of deal. Because I think the Giants' defense is still good enough. I mean, for goodness sake, if you could tell a Dallas Cowboys offense that had both Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott, okay, because Zeke wasn't suspended, they somehow managed to hold that offense to 19 points. So the magic number for the Lions has got to be get to 20 as much as possible, and hope for the best. So if you're the Lions, like I said, if the Lions win, probably a 20-17, 19-16 type of score. Where if the Giants win, I say 17-14.
All right. If the Giants were to get Odell Beckham back, then they would score at least 23 points, and the Lions would score 20. So 23-20 Giants if Odell Beckham plays. And then if the Lions, if Odell Beckham doesn't return, then the Lions would win. Let's say 17-14. So I'm predicting a field goal margin either way for each team, depending on the return on Odell Beckham. So, we covered Lions, we covered pro football. Now it's time for college football.
Touchdown, Michigan!
That was a good 30 minutes of Lions football, or 25 minutes after the beginning of the show. But let's go ahead, not wasting anybody's time. Michigan Wolverines put away the Cincinnati Bearcats 36-14 in Ann Arbor. They were 8th ranked. Their defense was again too much, a pick six including, and Walton Spate played inconsistently again. He fumbled the football this time. He didn't throw any interceptions, but he was fumbling the football.
That was a fumble, but in my opinion, I'm going to put that more on the receiver, Kikoa Crawford. You know, when you're doing a jet sweep play like that, and you pretty much you were going to be going. You got to expect that. Hey, at any moment, that ball's going to be put right on your numbers in the breadbasket. So you got to be ready to hang on to it. And that's where really I think the youth of Michigan comes into play. You know, they've only returned 5 starters from last year, only 1 on defense. This is where the youth could hurt them. Like, and Jim Harbaugh even mentioned in the post-game press conference of where, you know, this is a team that's going to have to get its experience throughout the year. Some of these players, young players, playing in front of a big crowd like this for the first time ever, first week in college and all that. So those are factors you have to take into consideration with some of these turnovers. Now, Spade, he should know better. But like some of these other players, like fumbling kickoffs, fumbling punt returns, fumbling jet sweeps, that maybe that inexperience coming into play. Even still, I felt the offense was more adequate enough. I mean, Spade had an absolute beauty of a throw to Crawford. Speaking of Crawford, in my opinion, he made up for the play last week against Florida where he overthrew Crawford for a walk-in touchdown, hit him in stride perfectly in the first quarter for a big strike, and it was off to the races from there. It was like, 17-7 and going into the third quarter. Now, again, this is where the inexperience of Michigan with the young players now, you know, remember last year they had experienced players and had trouble closing the deal in some instances, having that killer instinct kind of deal, kind of mindset. So it was definitely going to showcase itself at some point in the season with this new young talent, the new starters. And it did. It allowed Cincy to get back into things, strike a quick touchdown their own, make it a 3-point game. But eventually, with Michigan being the more talented team, the better team, they found a way to make a big play. Spate hits Grant Perry in stride, and he's able to do enough to get into the end zone. And then, of course, the defense, they finished the job with a pick six in the fourth quarter. It's worth noting, by the way, the person who did the pick six, I forgot the first player, but I know the second player was Levert Hill. His brother, Delano Hill, played last year as a senior on the safety, so it's nice to see, little brother try to pick up big brother's mantle. It's worth noting that in now officially 8 quarters of football, which is the 2 full games that Michigan played this year so far, in 8 of those quarters, they've had 4 pick sixes on the defensive side of things. So, and that should really speak to the type of talent level and the overall direction of what their defense looks. Yes, we're young, and Dan Miller pointed this out on Sportsworks. Yeah, they're young, but they're athletic, they're fast and raw. And, you know, when you have those type of tangibles versus the one tangible that really helps them, you know, the numbers game outplays itself. 3-1, that type of thing. Most instances, you're going to see the defense flying at you and wreaking havoc, just like they did against Florida, just like they did against Cincy. And I guarantee, in my opinion, they're going to do that for a lot of games this year as well. There's going to be the noteworthy games that they'll be really, truly tested. I'm already circling the date for October 21st against Penn State. And, of course, that 2-headed monster right at the end of the year at Wisconsin, home against Ohio State. But it's still a magical situation where your defense can keep you in the game as much as possible throughout practically every game this season. It's going to be up to your offense to see if they can make a play themselves without shooting themselves in the foot. You saw that. I thought the best example of that last year was Spate, of all people, making that big throw to Amar Dalbo to get the touchdown to beat Wisconsin. Of course, scenario was him throwing the pick six against Ohio State. So it's fist of both work, fist in the worst type of deal that they got to get better at without question. But I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet. I mean, Pat Caputo was trying to say something.
That guy. Oh.
Yeah, it was on SportsSource, and his team doesn't look so good. Pat.
Neither did.
I don't want to go the Sparty bias route here, but come on, they beat the team 36-14. They got a pick six, and their defense is fast as hell with this talent. Yes, they're young, but look how they're doing, how they're performing, and they're So yes, they'll get tested once state comes, but that's still 5-6 weeks from now. They got plenty of time to fix up some errors before you travel to Happy Valley for that most likely will be a prime time night game, whiteout type of deal. So they'll have time between here and now to fix up whatever they need to be best prepared as possible for that game at least. So this is a team that got nothing. Excuse me. This is a team that is still solid, and as we saw with Ohio State losing. Currently, with any team that's in front of you, with all these early matchups of top-ranked teams facing each other, as long as you handle your business, the other teams will just kill each other out, and you'll be the last team standing, so to speak, metaphorically speaking here. But, you still have to take care of your own business, and like I mentioned before, with Wisconsin, Penn State, and, of course, coming up against Ohio State, and of course, coming up with Penn State, they'll have their own opportunity to prove themselves. But right now, they're sitting pretty good at number 7, and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out.
Yeah, their next game is at home against the Air Force Falcons, Saturday at noon on BTN. That's going to come up soon in our college football and the Mitten Quick Picks. But speaking of Michigan State, and I was going to touch on them too, we're going to get to them right now anyway. They doubled up the Western Michigan Broncos 28-14 in East Lansing. L.J. Scott, unlike in Week 1, didn't fumble the football at all, and Brian Lewerke continued to turn on the afterburners, especially for a 61-yard quarterback keeper carry. And for Western Michigan, Darius Phillips turned on his afterburners for a 100-yard touchdown kick return. He also had another long return for about 60-plus yards. He's NFL bound. He's the next Devin Hester, but he's part of a team that you can't rule out yet. They lost to 2 tough teams on the road and have an almost easier schedule forthcoming, Idaho and then the MAC schedule.
Yeah, and I think for Western, yes, it's 0-2, but it's you can read between the lines and beyond that record. See the type of teams that they were facing the opening couple of weeks and how they played those games. I think more than likely they were going to lose regardless, but I think the effort that they showed was more than, at least in the case of the USC game, admirable in its own way. Yes, they lost, but they put up as much of the fight as possible. This was the type of fallback you were going to see because what the players that you lost from the previous year and your head coach, P.J. Fleck, that was going to happen regardless. You were going to have some type of step back. The question was how much. We've seen how much so far. They lost 2 games, but they got a more favorable schedule coming up for them. So don't worry. It's folks from Kalamazoo. Don't press the panic button like, oh my God, we're going to be shit. No. It's just the nature of ebb and flow. That's how it goes here. Rest up, rest easy. You're going to get a couple of good wins here, a couple of easy wins, essentially lock-ups, gimmies, and you'll be fine till the rest of the next schedule comes into play.
Yeah. Speaking of resting up, the Spartans have a bye week, and so do the Eastern Michigan Eagles. But
touchdown, MSU!
Spartans could just got the job done. Their defense just was able to manage to hold the Broncos to just 14 points, just 2 touchdowns, just enough for a 28-14 win. So,
yeah, like you mentioned with how they ran the ball, almost 300 yards accumulated on the ground, whether it be Lewerke or L.J. Scott amongst other players game. We're used to seeing MSU playing, like the days of 2010 through 2015. We're going to pound you. We're going to punish you with our ground game. We're going to play stout defense, and that's how we're going to smother you and beat you. So it was nice if you're an MSU fan. It was nice to see that type of deal. I wouldn't get quite so comfortable yet. Yes, you're 2-0, but look at the teams you had to play so far. And look who's up next after your bye week. You're playing Notre Dame. Good luck. Also, you're playing a Notre Dame who may be motivated and pissed off because they just lost to Georgia. Double good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But we got to go to the Eastern Michigan Eagles real quick. We were going to segue to them before we get to my Chippewas. The Eastern Michigan Eagles just barely held on for a 16-13 win at the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, as we saw in the remainder of the game on BTN, on the BTN Alternative Channel's coverage of that game from Rutgers, New Jersey. Both teams struggled on offense. When it came down to it, Luke McLean committed a dumb 15-yard penalty that gave a roughing the quarterback penalty that gave the Rutgers Scarlet Knights some yardage. That took them into field goal range, but then Rutgers committed a face mask penalty, or a hands to the face, illegal use of hands to the face mask, whatever you call it. That took them back 15 yards and back out of field goal range. And the Eagles' defense took advantage and shut the door on the Scarlet Knights' offense, and time ran out. The Eastern Michigan Eagles remain undefeated at 2-0, and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, whether they agree with the referee's call at the end, whether his knee is down or not, Bolin, the quarterback, that's the last name I was looking for.
About the game itself, I managed to catch those last few minutes. As dramatic as it was also really hysterically hilarious. It was like a battling game of a tug of war. Who wants to lose this game the most? All it needed, you had penalties and interceptions, both teams making dumb mistakes, and of course, at the end, ending with a sack of all things, with Rutgers somehow not being aware enough, hey, we got to get rid of this ball, and we have no timeouts left. Like I said, all it needed was the track Yakety Sax, which is the Ben Hill theme song. That's all it needed playing in the background during those last 5 minutes. My God. But still, credit to Eastern. Yes, it was ugly. Yes, it was sloppy. Yes, it was brutal to watch. But they got the win, and they're 2-0, and they should be happy for it.
Of course, yeah. Eastern Michigan also has the bye week. Then they're playing the Ohio Bobcats at home. Time to be determined. Can't see the date. Yeah, that's September 23rd. So on the 16th they have off.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, both Eastern and MSU have the bye weeks for this upcoming week.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Spartans have the bye week, like I mentioned before playing Notre Dame at 8 o'clock on the 23rd on Fox National Broadcast on the 23rd. And today's Dominic Long's birthday, by the way. Just found out on ESPN.com. Mark D'Antonio's tweet.
Well, enjoy some birthday cake and don't get arrested.
Right. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay out of trouble. That's the important thing. We got to get a cue from the Michigan Department of Community Health, or the Michigan Department of Safety, or the Michigan Department of Transportation to sponsor this podcast, because it detects the truth. it points out the important things about sports too. But last but definitely not least,
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
My Central Michigan Chippewas went into Kansas and stunned, not only stunned, but almost obliterated the Kansas Jayhawks 45-27 on the road. The Kansas Jayhawks had a very awful first half on both sides of the ball, and the CMU Chippewas took advantage and survived a Jayhawk comeback in the third quarter and then pulled away. Shane Morris actually did an okay job. Let me look at the stats here as I re-enter ESPN.com.
Because when you say okay, you almost made me bust out laughing.
Well, they did. Oh, they did very well. 28 of 37, 467 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. Mark Chapman, 8 receptions, 168 yards, 3 touchdowns. They did superb offensively.
Hey, you gotta give them credit. They did outstanding. They went on the road, to a Power 5 conference team, and completely blew the doors off them. They curb stomped them. I'm not sure how it will play out for the rest of the season, but certainly it's going to give them a big boost. We all thought the same thing last year when they went into Oklahoma State and made that upset. Controversial, yes, but they got the win, and then it imploded in their faces down the stretch. So I would rather be a little bit cautious here to seeing how this start goes. But, let's see how they do when it comes to MAC time before we start saying, you can be a bracket buster of sorts. You can make a big bowl or something. So let's see how they do the rest of the year before we start making those type of projections.
Yeah, but if they keep that up going into Syracuse, they might have a better chance of getting revenge against the Orangemen next week at 3:30 on the road at Syracuse on ACCN, the ACC network.
No question. This is has given them some momentum, and with Shane Morris, he's say what you want about how things were handled in Michigan, but I think he is an adequate type of player. I think he fits Central very well, as you can see with the stats he's put up so far, and not to mention he brings the experience of being at least, if not playing, but at least being around the situations, around the sidelines, some of these massive games, massive stadiums, that type of exposure. He is used to it to a degree, so maybe that could be an X factor that could help them out when they're going into to the Carrier Dome to face the Orangemen this Saturday.
Yep. And that leads us to the college football and the Mitten quick picks. We only have 3 on hand since the Spartans and the Eagles both have a bye week on the 16th next week. Starting off with the Central Michigan Chippewas at the Syracuse Orangemen, a double segue in one moment here. 3:30 on ACCN. Who you got?
Syracuse versus Central. I think Central will put up a strong effort, but it just won't be enough. I mean, Syracuse, they're going to win pulling away. Probably score 38-24.
It's going to be closer than that. I still think Syracuse will win. I'm gonna say 34-31 in regulation. But if Central proves me wrong, man, then I'll be at least convinced that they'll be ready for a MAC season, whether they do well or mediocre or worse. I'll see what they brought to the table in their upcoming MAC schedule. The Idaho Vandals at the Western Michigan Broncos at 7 o'clock, not televised on regular national broadcast, just online on the ESPN app. I see Western Michigan winning. It's going to be an easy win, at least 45-7.
Yeah, this should be a no-brainer. Your face is the home opener. Finally finally get a chance to play in front of their home crowd, and it's under the lights, and it's against a team, the Idaho Vandals, who lost the previous week to UNLV 44-16. So it would be safe to expect that type of thing here. Western will roll the boat.
Yep. And then, last but not least, the Big House, number 7 Michigan Wolverines, Saturday at noon on BTN against the Air Force Falcons. I'll let you predict first.
Yeah, now we thought it would be an easy pick against Cincinnati. The score was probably was a little bit more deceptive than one should think to see, but I think this one's going to be a little bit more breathe easy. Yes, they have an option attack, but let's look at who they faced last week. They faced a team called VMI. What was it? Maybe it was like Virginia Madsen or something. And they won 62-0. Ooh, you want a cookie? Yeah. Now you're coming into our house facing, first of all, a team with a pulse. Okay, you're not facing an FCS. How many people want to kick?
Oh, sorry. Oh, geez, for this.
Yeah, you're facing a legit team with legit talent and defense and speed and power. I don't see them even a close. I think this is going to be a start out like the Cincinnati did last week. Only it's going to be more consistent, and Michigan's going to pound Air Force into the dirt. If I want to pick the score, let's go 55-7. Because somehow Air Force will get a touchdown in garbage time and blow the shutout and piss everyone off. So let's go 55-7 Michigan.
55-7, you said?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm gonna predict Michigan 56, Air Force 7.
So we're off by a point.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's the college football and the Mitten quick picks. I apologize for my alarm setting off. I had to try to. I had to turn it off as best I can. That song I heard, we apologize if anything else happened. Damn, my damn phone distorting back. But that's all football that we've covered for today, for this week. Now let's touch on other things real quick.
That one is long gone.
The Tigers are officially eliminated from the contention in the American League Comedy Central and soon to be eliminated from the wild card contention as well.
Yay.
Mm-hmm. Yep, last I saw they were 25.5 back in the Central, 13.5 in a wild card. That might have been 2 nights ago, but man, it's terrible. Yeah, they have no chance in hell coming back. Of course. Then you got the Red Wings.
Say one good thing about the Tigers this week is, hey, you got a triple play. Good on you.
Oh yeah, 5-4-3 triple play. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Candelario to Kinsler to that prospect first baseman filling in for the suspended Miguel Cabrera in Toronto, Rogers Center. Now let's go to the Red Wings. Before we get to the video of the decline and fall of an empire, the Red Wings signed a 9-year veteran. I don't know what position he plays. PA Pareanteau to a PTO with an invite to training camp. This puts the icing on the puts the cap on the bottle on the departure of Andreas Athanasiou, who is signing a KHL contract in Russia because they don't have any cap space. But replacing him with a washed-up veteran in PA Pareanteau, that just adds to Ken Holland's ineptitude of signing washed-up veterans, like Brad Richards, for example, two seasons ago.
Brad Richards, Stephen Weiss, Daniel Afects, and the list goes on and on. There is an update. I haven't seen anything in the past couple of days that's broken regarding Anthony Ciu to Russia. Last update I said is he's taking his time. It was about a day or two ago. Some would say that's a good thing. That means he's pondering whether or not he wants to stay or go. That's Anthony Ciu's point. Now for Pareanteau, his position is a winger, right wing, by the way. He's a 9-year vet. He played last year for the New Jersey Devils. He had 13 goals in 59 games. Year before that, he also had 20 goals and 41 points for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And total, he's played for 8 teams, played almost 500 games, has 114 goals and 296 points total. Okay.
So he's had a hell of a career. Don't get me wrong.
He's had a decent career, but this is not the type of deal you want to make if you want to call yourself still wanting to contend for the playoffs. But I take that back because in Ken Holland's mind, this team is still a playoff contender. So this would be the move for him to make.
Yeah, this looks more like a team, still like a team that's actually a handicap with old veterans. Which leads us to the video from Urinating Tree on YouTube, Decline and Fall of an Empire, the Detroit Red Wings, the team name first before the title, in the title. Took 12 minus minutes long, 11 and 43. But it explained... It touched on Joe Louis Arena. It touched on Jeff Blashill. It touched on the veteran contracts or long-term contracts, veteran or young, that Ken Holland signed, whether it be Advocator, Helm, DeKaiser, Eriksson, Kronwall, Zetterberg, Franzen. It touched on everything. Ken Holland. And they even touched on not only Mike Ilitch, but Chris Ilitch as well. And Andreas Athanasiou not being able to be signed because they ran out of cap space again. And it was very accurate and very hilarious.
Yeah, which really sums up the content of the uploader himself. I was actually a little bit pleased that he finally got around to covering some of our teams, because I've seen practically all of his work. It is, like I said, informational and hilarious at the same time, whether it be the choice of music that he samples and uses as the backdrop, or his explanations or metaphors or euphemisms, and of course, colorful drops of language. It's like, the best brand of, if you want to go satiric critique / riff evisceration, go for it. It's perfect, especially when it comes in regards to some pathetic sports franchises out there. On the one hand, I'm a little bit surprised that this is the first Detroit team that he would do, not the Tigers or the Lions. But in a sense, this makes sense because he actually, even though he's gotten some attention by making vids on football teams, his best knowledge is more so within the realm of hockey. So I'm kind of not surprised that in terms of going out to Detroit teams, he would pick the hockey team to go first. As for other vids, I would probably say they're a little bit more right-wingish for my liberal taste, but still, I'm not going to hold that against the content overall, because I can't deny what I see. And what I see is outstanding quality, timely humor, and overall great videos that everybody should definitely take a gander at viewing, no matter what side you agree with. Because when it comes down to making fun of sports teams, this is up there with some of the best I've ever seen. As on to the topic of what he did with the Wings, it was quite noteworthy for him to point out, in his view, the moment instead of, possibly being groomed to take over for Ken Holland decides, nope, he blocks the move, and Eisman says, okay, I've seen the writings on the wall, decide to leave and go to Tampa, and we all seen what's happened since then. The moves that he's made, whether, most know, off the top of my head, Tyler Johnson, for instance, the other players that he's brought in and drafted or traded for during his tenure as GM. It's also pointed out by the fact that when he left, he managed to convince some scouting experts for the Wings to go with him. So if that had been the case, if Stevie Y had stayed, we would have the type of players that Tampa had. We would have had them wearing the wing wheel most likely. So it is a crushing reminder, a soul-crushing reminder, to say, wow, what could have been and how much we have truly fallen. I think he's probably a little bit too lenient on the Ken Holland criticism. If you ask Jeff Moss, he's probably lenient on the Ken Holland criticism. But all in all, the whole entire vid itself was about as perfect a autopsy or postmortem of the Red Wings empire as I've ever seen. And I thought the kicker, I guess you can say the coda that he used to close out the video, was the absolute perfect metaphor for how they've fallen. It was showing the clip of when the Blackhawks beat the Wings in Game 7 in 2013 of the Western Conference semis in OT. And that marked the last time that the Red Wings have played in any type of playoff series that didn't go past the first round. So that was the more fitting summation to that video. And, you also brought up a point that something that I've mentioned to you a couple of times before on the show. We're getting ready to enter the Dead Wings era again.
We already have.
Yeah, we already have, but it's going to be more. It's going to showcase a whole lot more this year, I believe. Yes, we got a new. I think that's why they got the new building to use that as your mask, as that disguise, as that facade, because it's going to be a year of shit. Period.
Yeah, and that play in Game 7, the Western Conference semis, Cronwall screened his own goaltender and tipped it in past Howard, 5-hole, I think, and into the net, and that was the game winner. Seabrook, the game winner, but back in 2013, that's Cronwall's fault. Cronwall should have done a much better job blocking that shot. He failed miserably, even if he got a piece of it, which is actually the wrong way. And speaking of videos, last Thursday, Jeff Moss debuted the Detroit Sports Rag on TV on YouTube, and he rebroadcasted his own broadcast on YouTube on Periscope. But the DSR on TV is finally here. Ed, that was 100. Everybody that saw it that was a fan of the DSR saw it as a perfect episode, bashing Lynn Henning, Chris McCoskey, Scott Anderson, Mike Valeni, Jamie Samuelson, Brad Galley, etc.
Yeah, exactly. I thought the vid itself, if you want to get nitpicky with some of the details of Moss, with some, the speech patterns or how he looked, or might have read the teleprompter, like he said himself, this is like his first time type of deal. But even still, I would probably, I would pick him in terms of who would do better in a teleprompter reading contest, Jeff Moss or Donald Trump. I'm picking Jeff Moss 10 times out of 10. So at least he's got that for him. I thought the presentation was quite solid, actually, in terms of the insider jokes, the graphics display, the setup on the.
I almost forgot to mention the graphics display of John Keating and Trevor Thompson sleeping with Ken Holland, the way Fox Sports Detroit panders to the Tigers and Red Wings franchise, by the way. And FSD sucks, then they can second deck like Rod Allen.
Exactly. That was just one example of, the video.
That also includes Craig Monroe.
Yeah, and that was just one example of the visual team putting in work. Like I say, and Moss even explained himself, if you don't get some of the references or jokes, that some of the reader followers of the articles might, don't worry, we'll fill you in more over the next few weeks. So I took this as basically the news magazine TV show version type of style of the website, just we're seeing it more in visual form. And so for presentation, I even noted Moss himself, on social media saying, hey, the way you present it, it reminds me of a mashup. And he stated John Oliver's influence, but I also saw a little bit of a mashup influence between John Oliver and Keith Olbermann as well. And I know that Moss is a noted KO fan, so I'm pretty sure that probably played into that type of how he wanted to do the presentation as well. So, all in all, thumbs up to Moss. I thought he had a great first episode. Can't wait to do more in the future. And hey, how about this? If this ball gets rolling big, deep enough, in terms of spreading out or what they can additions what they can do, I wouldn't mind something around the near future of, say, a round table or something to that effect of, we want to discuss what's going on with a football team or something with us. I wouldn't mind me or you or whatever pitching in to help out with the discussion on the dais, if that were to come to be.
Yeah, would I fucking ever, man? Holy shit, yeah. Yeah, I already asked Jeff Moss earlier that I or requested that to be on the DSR and TV. He said, "Get in line." Yeah, that's, in other words, he accepts my requests. Yeah, that's I get.
It'll take some time, but I think seeing how you and Moss interacted, I think that day will come eventually. It's just like you said, just get in line. It's gonna take a while. Rome was not built in a day.
The other factor is Moss has to keep trying to come up with other television negotiations. I would just the mainstream media can. We know the mainstream media can never allow that content because they keep it 100% clean for the entire society to see and hear, and we get that. Here's my idea. How about a special cable channel for adults only, especially for Detroit sports fans, that or national sports fans, whatever, that the Detroit sports rag on TV can actually fit in.
Or if there was a way that Moss could find the best type of suitor that, I guess, since this was categorized under digital content, find some type of digital content provider that specializes, that doesn't care too much for,
that's what I meant.
Censorship, all that. I mean, come on, if you could put Alex Jones and make him famous, what? You can't do the same for Chip Muff? So, I could see something like that, because no way in this current format or any format, I think Moss would ever be allowed to be his free self on TV. I think the best way would be some type of digital streaming, digital media provider, that type of sort of deal where there's fewer limits on censorship and how he presents himself, and more emphasis on being the vintage Moss that we see in the articles.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Well, we still got one more team to cover before we get to the 5 questions and the What's Your Grade segments, and that's the Pistons.
Left sideline, 3, and he answers.
It has something to do with the NBA draft lottery reform. Let me pull it up on ESPN.com. The NBA, it headlines NBA evaluating draft lottery reform to discourage tanking. From Adrian Wojnarowski. The NBA is aggressively pursuing draft lottery reform that could be voted into legislation and instituted by the 2019 draft, league sources told ESPN. Commissioner Adam Silver is a strong advocate to de-incentivize tanking by implementing lower odds on the NBA's worst team to gain the top picks in the draft, league sources said. The proposed measures would also increase the chances of better teams making a jump into the draft lottery. The NBA's 14 non-playoff teams comprised the league's annual draft lottery system. The NBA Competition Committee, comprised of several general managers and coaches, that includes Jeff Bauer and Stan Van Gundy, that didn't make the playoffs last season for the Pistons this calendar year, is expected to vote next week on sending a formal recommendation to the Board of Governors for final passage, league source said. There's too much, league sources said, to begin with, and all over the article, so I'll skip that part. The Competition Committee is given significant latitude to challenge and amend the league officials' proposal, and thus could recommend none, part, or all of a proposal for the league owners to vote upon at its late September Board of Governors meeting in New York. Presently, the NBA team with the worst record can drop no lower than number 4 from number 1.
All right, get it out.
Apologies. From no lower than number 4 from number 1. Bless you. Bless me. But the NBA's currently proposed legislation could allow that team to drop from 1st to 5th in the lottery, league sources said. In the lottery, according to those sources. This would include a domino effect through the lottery, where the second worst record, presently dropping no lower than 4th, could fall to 6th. Then the number 3 team could drop as far as 7 and on down. Currently, the teams with the three worst records have an ascending chance, a better chance, increasing chance of winning the number 1 pick, including number 3 at 15.6%, number 2 19.9%, and number 1 25%. The NBA's proposal would flatten those odds and give the 3 teams with the worst record the same percentage of earning the number 1 overall pick, leagues number 1 pick. Now the worst record to the 5th worst record is a gap of 25% to 8.8%, but new legislation would tighten that difference significantly. For example, the 5th worst team would only have a few percentage points less than those teams with new equally odds among the 3 worst teams. At the apex of the Philadelphia 76ers tanking saga, the NBA's Board of Governors voted down a somewhat more liberal proposal on lottery reform in 2014. Another idea born out of the Competition Committee that could gather support, league sources said, no team can pick in the top 3 of the draft in consecutive years. For example, if the Minnesota Timberwolves win the number 1 pick and drafts Karl Anthony Towns, as was the case in 2015, it can pick no higher than number 4 in the next lottery. For now, that idea is outside of the league's office proposal, but is expected to be considered in the upcoming committee meeting. The Competition Committee is also finalizing its recommendations to the Board of Governors on the league's new resting plan, which would level punishment on teams for sitting out key players for nationally televised games, or multiple key players for road games. The Commissioner's office, Adam Silver's office, has pushed a plan of minimizing, if not eliminating, the intentional resting of players in nationally televised games. 2 more paragraphs here, then we'll talk impromptu style. Many NBA executives believe those new measures will effectively impact the perception of the tanking issue, what with the incentivizing of teams to play healthy starters down the stretch of the season. Many teams believe that tanking is no longer an issue in the league, and that the fear of other teams mimicking the 76ers process has been unwarranted. There is some fear among small market teams that lottery reform will make it even harder for them to obtain star-level players through the draft, especially because of a pervading belief that it has become increasingly hard to do so through free agency and trades. Teams believe that the process of trading for star players has become more difficult, with agents and players warning that they'll leave come free agency and will never consider re-signing with those teams. So that's the end of that. So this is a pretty starting in the 2019 draft. It's going to come. It's going to come down to an even tougher situation. For example, the Detroit Pistons. And that's going to be another one of our 5 questions, which is coming up next. But your thoughts on that?
I don't mind the proposal that the league is offering. I get it. What they're influenced by, saying it's a combination of things. The explosion of the one and done players, the one and done era that we've seen, might be good for the league, but it's diluted college hoops tremendously, in my opinion. And also, the process, if you want to call it, the process renaissance that Sam Hinkie tried to establish in Philadelphia, which to an extent has worked. I mean, now they got Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz. So if those players stayed healthy, that would be a type of formula that, if everything comes to fruition, this will be the type of formula that mostly every team will want to try to go after if you're not a big-time power, So this is the league's way of trying to corral that and balance things out. Now, another way to balance that, like I mentioned before, I mentioned the one-and-done era, you got to put more clamps on that. I'm not saying you dismantle it completely. I think players, if they're good, if they're that confident, they should have that option. But if you serve that, you got to make some type of modification where if you want to have that one and done type of feel, they can have the option to come out of high school, or if they don't come straight out of high school, they must play at least 2 years, not play 3, because 3 would be mandatory. I think that's too stiff of a mandatory type of thing. But if you don't want to come out straight out of high school, but you still want to, leave early, I think play 2 years is still a fair enough margin, in my opinion. Play 2 years, and you can be immediately eligible to leave after that. So that's how I would do it if you would put me in charge of that. I don't know how the league is going to do it, but this is their way to corral tanking as best as possible. I understand completely. But, other teams are going to find loopholes. They're going to find ways to get what they need to do to improve their odds. So while this will make things more difficult, it's not going to be the total elimination of tanking. I don't think we're ever going to see tanking being phased out in any type of facet in sports, whether it be football, basketball, or whatever.
Good points. All right. That leads us to the 5-question segment. Ed, you ready?
Absolutely, Taylor. Go ahead and let him rip, my friend.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth.
Question number 1. What do the Michigan Wolverines need to do with Wilton Speight?
I would say bench him. I think Harbaugh mentioned that, John O'Corn's going to get some playing time regardless. So when everyone saw Speight get benched for a couple minutes for O'Corn, and they're like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Whenever he gets in trouble again down the road, they're going to bench him. Now, that's not out of realm possibility either. People have been saying John Peters or O'Corn or somebody else is going to just waiting in the wings. They'll be ready just in case Speight continues to screw up. But in my opinion, I think how they've handled Speight is best. They've done as best as possible. He is the senior. He's the 5th-year senior. I thought he played exceptionally well last year until he got hurt, and still came back. Was dealing, and like I said, was Jekyll and Hyde in the Ohio State game was inadequate against Florida State, but still, he led us on that comeback, and he's had some inconsistency issues, obviously, for the start of this season so far. But as long as he's not throwing bad picks like how Shane Morris was before he got concussed against Minnesota, I don't think that's anything to worry about. I think Michigan is doing the best they possibly can with the situation. And it's up to State. At the end of the day, it's up to the player to make those type of positions. Yes, it's up to the coach to put them in good enough spots, but at the end of the day, it's you on that field throwing that ball, making the right moves, making the right executions. It's up to you to see what you can do to prove your standing and prove your work. And that's what it's going to come down to for Golden State.
Absolutely.
Next question.
Question number 2, can the Western Michigan Broncos rebound from their 0-2 start to this season? Evidently, yes. You can't count them out. Like I said, they're actually a good team. Don't let their 0-2 record fool you, people, especially to the Chippewa Nation. I'm a Chippewa, but I admit, from what I've seen from the Western Michigan Broncos, especially Darius Phillips, of all people, he's NFL bound. 100-yard touchdown kickoff return.
That speed is going to draw some attention.
And they got an easy schedule coming up, too, including Idaho and the MAC.
Yeah, so, right, you just mentioned those two teams right there. You mentioned the team that's coming up, and there's going to be some gimmies in that MAC schedule. So it's not going to be like, in my opinion, don't worry, it's not going to be like a 4-8 or 3-9 type of deal. They're not going Notre Dame or MSU on us.
No.
Be respectable. I think this is going to have a respectable record, at least 7, if not 8 wins by the end of the year, and it'll show. It's all in due process.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Question number 3: which team was better, the Eastern Michigan Eagles or the Rutgers Scarlet Knights? Evidently, the Eastern Michigan Eagles. They played a little more consistently than the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. They took the lead late. Rutgers Scarlet Knights, in the end, committed a penalty that took them out of field goal range right after that Luke McLean roughing the quarterback penalty on EMU that put them in field goal range before that.
Basically, that whole ending sequence was Rutgers in a microcosm. Not just the team, the whole program is an absolute abomination and a disgrace. I know they like to pride themselves as being the birthplace of college football, but my God, even the founding fathers of college football would be cringing if they saw this shit today.
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't matter what they are, historically.
Next question.
Question number 4. Did Lions rookie wide receiver Kenny Golladay dive short of the goal line on his second touch? Oh, wait. I'm going to change this up here. He was in the end zone. So question number 4. What are the chances of Odell Beckham coming back? I know we don't have a crystal ball, but what are the chances of Odell Beckham coming back for the Giants against the Lions next Monday night?
Well, seeing how this offense looked like absolute drizzling shits without him, I can almost guarantee he's going to do whatever he can to get himself ready to try and at least make it a game-time decision. As to whether or not he will likely play or not, I think that's still up in the air. Probably as close to 50-50 as you can get. Yeah, that was a stumper of a question. I'm pretty good at stumping my co-hosts.
Next question.
You come pretty good with those. I'll give you credit on that.
Yeah, and here's another one. Question number 5. Due to the ramification of the reform of the NBA draft lottery announced by Commissioner Adam Silver, what can the Pistons do to get a higher draft pick if they wanted it again starting in 2019?
Well, it's not entirely impossible if you want to do, right, you can't tank, or if you're still out of playoff contention, or if you're good enough to not fall into the lottery, you can still get the number 1 pick by any means, or top pick by any means. It just comes down to finding the team that might have the pick that you want, and also just give them a very valuable prize, like i.e. a top player or a top, a good secondary player, that type of deal. There's an analyst on Fox Sports 1. His name is Nick Wright. He just started his own morning show with Chris Carter, First Things First. Before that, he was a known frequent guest on Callan Cowherd's The Herd radio program. And one of his last appearances before he started his First Things First show, he mentioned, as a possible scenario, because, let's think about how Philly was able to draft Markelle Fultz. They sent Boston a good enough package, and Boston, remember, they didn't hold this pick. They got it from the Nets. So that led to him discussing or theorizing that if Cleveland wants to really go all in, whether or not this is LeBron's final year here or not, they have, since they got that number 1 pick from next year's draft that the Boston Celtics own, but is Brooklyn's pick, they got that from Boston in the Kyrie Irving trade. They could then use that unprotected 2018 first-round Brooklyn pick and probably use that as a deal package to help them land a big name, i.e. DeMarcus Cousins, for example. So that could be the type of model that the Pistons should pay attention to in terms of if you don't have enough money for impending free agency, but you still want to get a big player or close to a big player, find a team that has a draft pick or an unprotected draft pick from someone else or whatever, trade to get that pick, and then use that pick as the bait, if you will, to get a better player that you really wanted to begin with.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So that wraps up our 5-question segment. And to our entire audience, if you want to answer those 5 questions, just replay that segment portion of this episode and answer them the best you can without going out of line. Now the final segment, what's your grade?
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
2 events, one from the past to begin with. Michigan keeping Wilton Speight as the starting quarterback prior to the Cincinnati game last weekend.
That was a B, because it's still too early in the season where you to make, in my opinion, a very irrational move of trying to swap quarterbacks because he threw a bad pass or whatever. Because, Florida's a good team. It's not like he was playing Akron this week or whatever, or playing Akron and he played like shit. He played a very solid, formidable SEC team, and in my opinion, had an inadequate game. Cincinnati is a step below, but even still, like Speight, he didn't have any interceptions as far as if memory serves me correct. Yes, that was the fumbled snap, but that was more so, I put that more on the wide receiver not handling the handoff on the jet sweep. So I can't really blame Speight too much. He had that beauty of a touchdown pass to Crawford, but he was still consistent. He played a little bit better here, in my view, than he did against Florida. And yes, there's still things to work on, but as long as he's not throwing, soul-crushing interception and pick six after another, I think Michigan, they should be content where they're at right now with the QB spot. So the grade I have to give them so far, a solid B, maybe a B plus.
Yeah, I'd give him a B minus because just to be fair, Wilton Speight, if he doesn't clean up his act soon, he may be at least benched.
Oh, no question. He should be mindful of what you do last year, what your standing is now. It should not give you carte blanche to be protected by anything. You could be replaced at a moment's notice. I think Harbaugh has instilled that in him and has him aware of that. So hopefully we'll see better consistency from Speight throughout as the season goes along.
Mm-hmm. And then the other event, the Red Wings signing PA Pareanteau to a PTO with an invite to training camp in Traverse City.
It's average, so I'm going to give it a C, maybe a C plus. This is the move they wanted to make as a puzzle. Now, pay attention to the fact that it's a tryout. It's not a full-blown contract yet. So I'm guessing they're still waiting to see how things will go with Anthony Ciu before they decide to make any more broader moves of trying to fill that gap. So this is still a wait-and-see type of move. So I'm going to give him an average grade, and that's a C.
Yeah, I can't roll out Anthony Ciu either. But the chances of him signing a KHL contract in Russia are very possible. evidently, and like he pointed out, they signed Ken Holland signed Pareanteau to a tryout contract, the invite to training camp in TC up northwest of the Mitten. I would have to give that a C plus to be fair. He's a veteran, but he didn't. It's not a permanent. It's not a real NHL 1-year contract or whatever. So thankfully, there's that. Ken Holland decided to make it actually more fair and not be too stubborn, not be too careless, not be as careless as he usually is. So that's our What's Your Grade segment. So for our audience, if they have grades for each event, post them in the comment bank in this episode, and please don't go out of line. So that's episode 281 of the Week in Review on Spreaker. Before we sign off, we want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well, because we want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast organization is boosting its posts of each episode from Spreaker on its Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth, and searching for local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, send our Facebook page a message. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and Ed Smith at EdSmith313. Like and share the Michigan Sports Truth Facebook page and join its Facebook group. Ed, I'll talk to you next week, and we'll talk to you, the audience, next week on episode 282.
Pleasure doing it. Always looking forward to more, Taylor. Have a good one, man.
Yep, thanks. And to the audience, thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.